senators and presidents that have come here to make important announcements. And so it's a privilege to be here at this historic building. And we're very grateful for this great meal. And the people who are really responsible for it are the folks at Mazda. And it so happens that the director of motorsports for Mazda is also the chairman of our board of directors. And I'd like to have him come up here for a moment. John Doonan.
Based on how busy things are with the board these days, I think I told Ron my Mazda duties I do in my spare time. But thank you all for being here today. It is a pleasure to have so many folks in the room. My colleagues Tom McDonald and Dean Case are here as well from Mazda. We're proud to sponsor the lunch. We have one of our racers who's here with us, Michael Johnson. Michael races in one of our Mazda Road to Indy series and a specially engineered Pro Mazda with hand controls. So Michael, there he is in the back. We're officially kicking off a very ambitious $7.5 million capital fundraising campaign for the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. Why, you ask? Well, back in January, we announced that the Motorsport Hall of Fame is relocating to Daytona Beach, Florida, into the Daytona International Speedway. We think that it's just an absolutely amazing place for us to take the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. We believe it's got the biggest sports car race in the world, Rolex 24. It's got two of the biggest sports stock car races, the Daytona 500 and the Coke 0400. It's got the Daytona 200 motorcycle race and the Supercross. And it lands in a state that is known for successful boat racing, aviation, and the kickoff to the IndyCar series every year, as well as famous Gator Nationals, which Don has won a couple times. So now we have to furnish that space. So we're kicking off this capital campaign. You're going to hear more about it over the next couple of days. Most all of our assets are already in Daytona, and we're going to be reconfiguring the space that was the Daytona experience over the next months and years. And we're part of the Daytona Rising renovation project, which is the biggest in the history of motorsports. So we'll talk more about capital campaigns later. Today and tomorrow are absolutely about honoring our inductees. So I just challenge everyone to enjoy the moments because they are very special moments at that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. First, there's a whole bunch of people here to introduce you to because you don't want to miss them. So we're going to talk about people in the audience who are special guests and some special returning people from the Hall of Fame. But let's just go around the room and say, welcome NASCAR Nationwide Series driver Steve Wallace. There's a campaign on in the room for a future Hall of Famer in the powerboat category. He's a multiple national champion and Gold Cup winner, and his name is Billy Shoemaker. Speaking of hydroplanes, the most well-known announcer in that field, is he here? I think he is. He's back there. Formerly from Detroit and a mainstay in some of our early, and now in our early inductions, Bill Munsey and many people that he inducted. And now he's preceded us down in Florida, so we're going to be joining him soon. Welcome, Jim Hendrick. From our Board of Trustees, she just stood up to be recognized, but she's also the brother of the famous Peter Revson, a great, great friend, Jennifer Revson. And the First Lady of Motorsports, some people know her as Miss Hearst Golden Shifter, but she's the First Lady of all motorsports, Linda Vaughn. Now there's few missing, and let me tell you, they're all, unfortunately, two valid reasons why they're not here. But representatives for John Bishop and Marshall Teague will be here, one or two tonight, but mostly tomorrow. And of course, Ari Lyndike himself will be here tomorrow. But we have some great guests here tonight, and they are the spotlight, and we're pleased to welcome them. Representing her father, Ole Bardo, who was, his big love was powerboats, but supported motorsports across the board. Evelyn Bardall McNeil. Representing his son, Ricky Graham, in the motorcycle category, a flat track ace of all time, who left us too soon. But his dad is here, and I don't think he's going to evangelize later, but please welcome Billy Graham. And unfortunately, our drag racing inductee, Raymond Beadle, I told you people have valid reasons. Raymond Beadle, who was really counting on this night, had some health issues just very recently, and strict orders from his doctors that he can't travel. So his son will be here to accept the award, and presenting it and representing him at the table here is a pretty good drag racer in his own right. Four-time national funny car champion and Hall of Famer, Don Snake Prudhomme. And Matt himself, the 1989 Winston Cup champion and winner of countless NASCAR races, and a pretty fair broadcaster right now. Welcome, Rusty Wallace. Okay, we're going to have questions from the audience, and we're going to have Tom McDonald up here from Mazda to pass the microphone around up here, and from he's like the voice of IMSA and Le Mans and any auction that's a big time auction on Fox Sports. Bob Varsha will be out in the audience with a mic, and as our moderator, this guy is a Formula One voice on NBC Sports, and he's a Formula 5000 and Trans Am champion, a racer's racer, and our MC for the last few years and for tomorrow night. Welcome, David Hobbs.
Thank you very much, Brian. I'm not sure what a moderator is supposed to do, because I have very little moderation in anything. I'm amazed that they let me speak in a room as this is a really classy room. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing in here, but here I am. So I will moderate, and obviously questions need to be asked. There's a lot of journalists here from national journalists as well as the Detroit broadcasters.
I was very fortunate. When I was 14 years old, my first race was the Detroit News Belle Isle Outboard Marathon, and it went from the Whittier Hotel, which was a famous hotel on the Detroit River at the foot of Burns, underneath the Belle Isle Bridge, underneath the Ambassador Bridge, all the way down to Grosse Ile and back. One lap was 50 miles. And so that was my first taste of speed on the water. And my last race, coincidentally, was on the Detroit River, where I won my Gold Cup in 1990, my third Gold Cup. But as a little kid, when I was in my basement on Ashland Avenue, this was 1955, was the first time I ever listened to an auto race, and it was in one of those old brown radios, and I was in the furnace room building a model airplane, and I was mesmerized by the Indianapolis 500. And that was obviously a very tragic year because Bill Vukovich got killed. But and there was a fire involved with that, which fire was a big danger in all forms of racing. But I thought, if I get something that's got water around me, at least I can jump into the water. So, and I lived on the Fox Creek Canal, so I'm an old river rat for sure. But Billy Schumacher and our paths crossed when we were cutting our teeth in the limited inboard hydros at the amateur level, and Billy got his big break when he drove the Miss Bardall, and I got mine driving for George Simon the Miss US, and won my first Gold Cup in the bicentennial year of 1976. 750,000 people lined the shores of the Detroit River, and I was able to win my Gold Cup racing against legendary Bill Muncie, who was the king and was in the class, the first inductee class of the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. So very proud day for me as a 32-year-old upstart coming up to be able to win against Bill Muncie. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Talking about power boats, and we've already heard that Bardal was such a big sponsor of power boats, love the boats as much as anything. Big sponsor of the Indy 500 and very involved in it. Maybe we'd like to hear from his daughter what her remembrances of those days were. Ellen?
They were golden days for us. We loved them, and I christened them, and they were just so exciting. I was race director of the company, and Julie got me all these good-looking racers, let me tell you. But it was really a wonderful time, and we built our own boats in our boat shop at our factory. So my father, who was a builder to begin with, he had been a carpenter and a master builder, and he ended up in the boat shop most of the time, telling the designers and Ron Jones and his son, Ted and his son Ron, and he was always there, and it was really a wonderful time for us. And Billy and Tom did things for us too, and it was wonderful.
Knows more about all of the heroes of horsepower than any of us is Miss Linda Vaughn. Linda?
Wow, he's the best looking announcer I've ever seen. You can work out here with me anytime, Bob. Every time he comes on television, my boyfriend goes, "There's your boyfriend." Oh, you guys do a great job. Of course, I grew up with David. I want to say David. Rusty Wallace and I have the same birthday. Happy birthday next week, Rusty. I'm so proud of you. You know, I have spent your entire career with you. We worked together. You shifted my gears for all those years. And working with Mr. Penske, I've adored working with him. But I've got to work with just about everybody. Whether it was on water, on the track, drag racing, IndyCar racing. Take Ari. Ari came to Indy. He was a little bit lost when he got there. And I saw he needed help. And he had the most beautiful wife. And she didn't speak much English at the time, and I invited her to the Coca-Cola Sprite Suite. We got on the side of his car, Domino's Pizza and Coca-Cola. So I had a little bit to do with that. So I got to grow up with all you guys. I'm growing a little older, but I can still shift gears. Thank you very much.
Linda was there, and I saw Linda, and I said, "Who that?" Looking at her absolute finest, it still looks pretty good today.
Well, Raymond is somewhere between Junior Johnson and the Wolf of Wall Street. Right in there somewhere, but he happens to be one of my best buddies. And we drag raced for many years together. Matter of fact, he beat us for the championship in 1980 and 81. And there were a bunch of Texans that came in there with Ting Ellen hats on, cowboy boots. And he just changed drag racing completely. He was quite a businessman, and he thought just for the kicks of it, he'd go over to NASCAR racing and see what he could do over there. But not only did he go over to NASCAR racing and see what he could do, he won the Winston Championship, which is kind of a hard thing to do, don't you think? And he just happened to do that in his spare time, basically, just goofing around. But he happened to have a great driver by the name of Rusty Wallace and a guy by the name of Tim Richmond. And the team that he had, that he picked back then, were all legendary car builders, crew chiefs today. So he's a really special guy, and I'm just so glad he's inducted into this Hall of Fame. He's well deserved. That's what I got to say about Rick Beal.
77, and himself at that stage was fairly young. And John and Peggy Bishop were just, well, they were instant. They ran it. John ran it with pretty much of an iron fist. I mean, he didn't take any from anybody, and they were a great couple. And I had many happy years with him, certainly because a lot of people went on a lot longer than I did. He had help right from the word go from the France family, so he was always involved in NASCAR. So it was well funded. And obviously NASCAR had their own rules and regulations, and they wanted the sports cars to be a little bit different to what we've been seeing with the factories against the factories. And of course, somebody would always get a much better car than the other guy. Then the sanctioning body would have to put weight on it, wanted to change the size of the engine. John wanted to have a GTP class, which he started in the early 80s. And he wanted everybody to be in there with a fair chance. So he made the rules and regulations pretty strict and pretty tight, which made it difficult for people to, a lot of factories. Porsche were very big supporters of it, BMW started with very big supporters. And it turned out to be a very, very successful sanctioning body. You know, unfortunately, John got older and then he sold it off. And unfortunately, Peggy passed away a couple of years ago, and John just passed away not long ago at all. So it would have been great on one hand for trying to be his own man on the other. And I was at Howard, Oklahoma, which I can't particularly recommend going to, but in the BMW 320 back in 78, I think, 78, 79. And every time I went to Howard, I won, because it's a very short track and the BMW is a short wheelbase car, so it's really easy to get around those tight corners. The Porsche 935 was had a lot more horsepower. It was just a little bit more difficult to get around that track. And John had all of us, the drivers and the team managers, people like Roger Bailey, who I hope we'll see tomorrow. He had us all into the motorhome, his motorhome, and said, look, I've got this concept of where I want him to go. Jim said basically them was all GT cars, 935, the BMW 320. That type of car, lots and lots and lots of Porsche 911s. And he came up with this concept about he wanted a GTB car, closed car, not an open coupe, a closed car, you know, 5.5 litre engine, about 600 or 700 horsepower, and he wanted to make this GTB series. And we all looked a bit skeptical at the time, but he pulled it off, and of course the GTB cars did go on to be amazingly successful. And it did get a bit out of hand when the BMW bought the turbo 4-cylinder in 1986, and then obviously the league stand took over, and then it was the final years for the Toyota with the 4-cylinder, which gave, God knows how much horsepower, out of a 2-litre 4-cylinder, about 1,000 horsepower out of 1 litre, 2 litres. So, very successful career there for John, and very sorry to not see him here tonight, because, you know, we all grew pretty pally with John Peggy over the years. We'll hear Rusty tomorrow being idolized, and I must say, sitting here with lunch, I can see why he'd be idolized.